The sequence I'm analysing today comes from Charlotte Wells Aftersun, released in 2022. This sequence takes place towards the end of the film and is commonly referred to by fans as the under pressure scene. The scene depicts Sophie, the protagonist, and Callum, her father, dancing together on the last night of their holiday to the song Under Pressure, hence the reason for it being called the under pressure scene. This essay aims to analyse the ways in which the film has used sound, lighting, editing, and camera angles to display the emotions of the characters presented, particularly Sophie's feelings of grief and loss. As suggested by the way people refer to this scene, the song Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie is particularly prominent in this sequence, as it makes up most of the sound, with only a few lines of dialogue being heard. During the parts of this scene taking place in the past, the music is clearly part of the diegetic world, or the world of the film, whilst it appears to be non-diegetic during the rave parts of this scene. The use of this song with questionable diegesis allows for audio match cuts, signalling to the audience that Sophie is remembering the dance with Callum at the same time that she's trying to reach out to him in the rave. The pace and volume of the music in this sequence reflects Sophie's emotions and thus further positions the audience in her perspective. When the scene first cuts to the rave, the music slows and decreases in volume. Combining this with the chiaroscuro lighting and the pained and confused expression on Sophie's face creates a somber environment that reflects the depression that the film suggests Callum and adult Sophie are fighting. The second time the scene cuts to the rave shows Sophie approaching Callum with the music's volume increasing and reaching a crescendo as she gets closer to him. This swelling of the music reflects the overwhelming grief and sorrow that adult Sophie is experiencing as she gets closer to understanding who her father was. The music then takes on an almost angelic sound as the scene match cuts between the rave and the memory with both versions of Sophie embracing Callum. This invokes senses of peace and happiness that Sophie's feeling. This cross-cutting then ends with Callum falling into the darkness of the rave, while Sophie looks over him before she flashes to a younger Sophie smiling down at him, symbolizing that Sophie has accepted the fact that she needs to stop looking for who Callum really was and instead remember the version of him that he wanted her to remember. This song was chosen not only for its audible qualities, but also for its lyrics and the connotations that they create within the context of the film. The song's lyrics heavily reflect Sophie's thought process and behaviours, and could be argued to almost be an internal monologue. The line reflects how Sophie now has a more complete view of the world than when she was younger. This allows her to know that Callum was struggling, but due to her not noticing it when she was younger, she doesn't properly remember what his struggles were. This idea is further reinforced with the line, "Turned away from it all like a blind man." With retrospective, she can tell that Callum was struggling, but as a child she didn't notice it. The song then ends on the line, stating the idea that Sophie finally understands herself and has come to accept that she needs to remember the version of Callum that he wanted her to remember, as previously stated. Ending on this line also carries significance, as there are still 3 more lines of the song, reflecting that Callum's story, like the song, is still incomplete. The majority of the film takes place in Sophie's memories, with relatively bright lighting and highly saturated colours. This results in many people claiming the movie to have a nostalgic look. This nostalgic feeling is due to aging causing a change in the way that we perceive colours. This use of colour to make a nostalgic look further reinforces that the film is from Sophie's point of view and allows the audience to feel more connected with the characters. This is particularly significant during this sequence due to the heavy use of the color blue, which is the color most heavily affected by color perception changing with age, further reinforcing the themes of Sophie's perception of Callum and the wider world changing as she grew older. The color blue also often carries connotations of sadness, resulting in the parts of the sequence with young Sophie having a feeling of bittersweet. The extreme contrast and strobing effect of the rave makes its lighting the most prominent feature. The flashing lights only allow a small amount of the space to be visible, creating the idea of Sophie only being able to remember fragments of her past. Having only short moments being visible acts in a similar way to a montage, creating a sense of urgency and panic, reflecting Sophie's feeling of this being the last chance to learn who Callum really was. The extreme darkness in these moments further reinforces the idea of Sophie suffering with depression and seeking comfort in Callum having gone through the same. Like the rest of the film, the rave is largely blue, but instead of the vibrant colours of the rest of the film, it is relatively dull. This works to juxtapose the vibrant colours, further adding to the nostalgic feeling of the rest of the film and enforcing the depressing feeling of the rave. Due to the lack of proper closure in the sequence, the ending is heavily subjective, allowing for people to have interpretations that may be close to them personally, giving the film a greater significance to individuals, and allowing for discourse between fans and critics, which then acts as word-of-mouth advertisement. Overall, this sequence perfectly encapsulates the themes of the film as a story of losing loved ones and cements its relevance to the rest of the film via the use of the motif of Callum dancing. The use of sound, light, editing and camera angles throughout this sequence, and the rest of the film, perfectly anchor the viewer in Sophie's perspective to convey her feelings of loss, sorrow and grief, which helps make the film feel like a more personal experience, especially when considering the subjectivity of the ending and thus the movie's wider themes.